Okay, welcome back to the Skill Economy, the podcast about closing the gap between what school and university teach and what the real world actually expects. Today we're joined by James. He's a careers and employability leader who's helped thousands of people move into real jobs. He's ran skills boot camps and supported hiring for some companies that we all know out there. He's now a graduate success manager at the University of East London, and today we're going to cover all things succeeding after your degree and much more. James, welcome to the podcast. How's your day going?
Hi, George. Great to be here. Going very well. Busy as always, supporting graduates into what they want to do.
Awesome, I love it. What does a day in your life look like these days for people who are wondering what a graduate success manager does?
Yeah, so I guess Graduate Success Manager isn't a title at all universities, but the University of East London places very high emphasis on graduates moving into work. We are a careers first university, so therefore we have a dedicated graduate success service which works with our graduates specifically to support them into work. So my day to day changes heavily based on what time of year we're in. So, as soon as we kind of get the data of our most recent graduates, it's kind of all hands on deck, finding out where our graduates are. Are they currently working? Do they want our support? What kind of support do they need? Some graduates are further away from the labour market. Some literally might just need a quick mock interview. So it really varies. My day can consist of delving deep into data. It can consist of meeting with employers to discuss their needs, and then also strategizing new ways to support our graduates.
How many students and young people is like the University of East London careers team supporting every single week?
So we'll do the wider careers team and then we'll do my team. So globally, UEL actually has around 40,000 students. Now around 25,000 of those are in the UK. Across the year, the wider careers team will aim to support all of those students. Now, my team specifically, this year, for instance, we are working very, very closely with around 2,700 recent graduates. So those will be from last year's graduations. And we will work with them very, very closely up until the 15-month mark, just before they receive the graduate outcomes survey. And week to week, we probably are speaking with up to around 100 graduates. That will peak and trough depending on different periods. Obviously, before Christmas, it got very, very quiet, and now we're into January. They're kind of getting back on the horse, getting back out there, looking for jobs. So it really depends on the week, but we can speak up to 100 graduates a week, maybe more.
Crazy. And I want to get into some of the challenges that you're finding they face. But I mean, first off, something that we spoke about briefly on our first call is that there's actually a big chunk of these young people that don't necessarily even want to get into work or aren't choosing to work. Why do you think that is?
I mean, it's very dependent on the individual. You can't kind of tie them all with the same brush. Student disengagement, it's a topic that's come up across higher education more frequently over the past few years. You can blame COVID, but it was starting even before COVID, I believe. Student engagement, it isn't laziness. It isn't that 99.9% of the time. You're obviously going to have the odd student who just doesn't want to do anything for no reason. But it's more about the uncertainty, I think. You see all of this kind of chaos in the job market. Obviously, what's going on in America is having some ripple effect over here. You see what's coming down with AI. It's kind of like, oh, doomsday, no one's going to have a job. There's no entry level jobs. The only thing you tend to see on LinkedIn these days about graduate jobs is that there is none. There was a very well circulated article, I think, by The Guardian, I think last week, saying 700,000 graduates are now on universal credit. I don't know the validity of those numbers. This could just be anyone from the last 50 years. So, it could be a 50-year-old who graduated 30 years ago is now on universal credit. These headlines are meant to invoke emotions. They're meant to make people click on it, right? So they're going to get the biggest, baddest number that they can. There are graduates who are struggling, but most of the time they feel unmotivated. They feel stuck because of broken processes. They feel like they're not getting the feedback. I'm sure you and I both, and including graduates, have been applying for jobs at some point in our life. You get your 50th email that says, sorry, you've been rejected with zero feedback. And you're just like, what is the actual point here? So it's not that they're lazy, which, a lot of people like to tar Gen Z with, or I think it's Gen Alpha now. I don't really know the terms, but they like to tie that brush with the lazy. They don't know what they're doing, but they lack that clear line of sight between the effort and the outcome. They can't picture what jobs look like a lot of the time. They can't speak to people like them that got there, especially global ethnic majority students. They might not see themselves in the big companies like Deloitte or the big banks or anything like that. And a lot of the times that they don't know what employers value a lot of the time as well. So they disengage as a form of self-protection. Resilience is a big thing amongst graduates. It's what I try to preach as one of the most important skills. They will just disengage to self-protect themselves from another rejection email a lot of times.
Talk more about that. Like, of course, I think that's a big thing. Students get so many rejection emails that they do start to disengage. And by disengage, do you mean they just stop applying full stop? Like, what does disengagement look like at that level?
Yeah, I suppose it can take a couple of forms. You will have some who just, say, what's the point? I'll just go on universal credit. It's enough for me to live at my parents'. They might then engage in it a couple of years later. You'll have other ones that then just kind of put far less effort into their applications, which is kind of the opposite thing of what you want them to do, because they need to keep trying and applying that effort. Otherwise, it's just going to be even more wasted effort. But it's just about how can we instill that confidence back in them that this is unfortunately the broken process at the minute, and it's what we've got to do. So that they will have that I don't even want to work feeling. I think when graduates leave work, they leave study, we have a lot of graduates who come to us and say, I've been striving for these grades for the past, well, technically 21 years, 18 years, whatever it is in the education system, and all of a sudden that whole reward system is changing. So they come in with this confidence that, years of academic comparison without that real world validation of an employer saying they want them potentially. There's these invisible rules, professional norms that, they may never be explicitly taught. We put on tons of different CV workshops, but a graduate or a student may not be able to make them. They may be working a part-time job while at uni. So if they're never explicitly taught a lot of these things, they may be doing it off the bat. They think they're doing it the right way. There's so much misinformation out there. And then there's also that fear of wasted effort. So, that question of what if I do put my maximum effort in and it still doesn't work? And I think there's that fear factor that if they come to us, we try with them, they give their absolute max effort for, I don't know, the next 3 months and it still doesn't work. What happens then? So they don't even want to put that effort in, because if they try everything and it still doesn't work, where does that leave them?
Yeah, I mean, psychologically, it's tough. What sort of like practices have you seen, or ways that you think about supporting those students who feel disengaged, who are worried about getting more rejection? How do you think about solving that problem as a graduate success manager?
Yeah, I think it is a difficult problem. There's no easy answer, and again, it will depend on the individual. You're going to have some individuals who, that they will bounce off a rejection like it's nothing, and they will just move on to the next one. And that is the best thing to do, in my opinion. Just take it with a grain of salt. There's so many applications out there. But for those graduates who maybe don't have as much confidence, or they don't take it as well, it's just about reassuring them, listening to their concerns. There'll be graduates who have been struggling to find a job for, I don't know, years potentially. They might not have been able to get one throughout uni. Maybe they didn't need one because of student finance. And they will be struggling, they will be very low on money. Their parents may be getting on their back. There may be cultural things at play. And it's just about being that open space for them to vent about their issues. It's not about, especially not on the first conversation, telling them what they're doing wrong. It's just about understanding, okay, this is what you've been doing. And then that allows us to understand where we think they might go wrong, but don't say it in that first instance, because that's just going to put them down. It's going to say, we're the experts, listen to us. And you want a little bit of that because you want them to trust you, but you don't want to put them down because, they're probably giving as much effort as they can with the knowledge that they have. So it's important that we validate their emotions, validate that, yes, this is a very tough job market, but it's not an impossible job market, and just giving them that reassurance and confidence. When I'm doing mentoring outside of my regular job, 9 times out of 10, the students and graduates know the right answer. They just need that validation and reassurance from a so-called expert to give them that extra confidence to move forward with whatever pathway they decide.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, it's so multifactorial. Who knows what causes it? Everyone's different. I think that's the important approach that you obviously spend a lot of time thinking about. You've mentioned a couple of key skills in this already that obviously make up a big part about some of those that succeed. For instance, they might be able to bounce back from negative or rejection faster than others. But generally speaking, there's a lot of talk out there about a skill gap, about employers
Hmm.
not finding the skills they need in graduates, about graduates not having the right skills. Do you think there's a skill gap?
Um, Definitely in some industries and some graduates as well. I mean, Uh, I think some employers definitely need to get away from the notion that graduates are perfect. I think some employers still expect graduates to walk in and just expect graduates to have all the skills necessary to pick up the job. When 99 times out of 100 it's probably not going to be the case. They're going to need some training and some support. But I think university is very good at teaching knowledge, but employers hire for behaviour, more often than not, and they hire for potential. So graduates very rarely lack intelligence. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to get through their degree. But what they do lack sometimes are work readiness behaviours. So the soft skills, the things that they really need to thrive in a workplace and be promoted and do really well. So, your professional judgment, so knowing what matters without being told, self-direction, starting stuff without being told, proactivity, communication, explaining your thinking, not just the answers, which, exams have always rewarded just knowing the answers a lot of the times. Reliability, doing what you said when you're told to do it and sticking to that timeline, meeting deadlines, and then picking things up quite fast, asking good questions, being not afraid to make mistakes. There's such essential skills that university doesn't really teach them those. Degrees reward individual performance most times. That you might do the odd group project, but you're still probably marked individually. So uni doesn't often reward collective outcomes. It's all about that individual performance, which work just isn't about. Um, so yeah, there is a skill gap. Very often not a technical skills gap. It's more that kind of soft skills.
Yeah, the knowledge versus behavior thing's interesting. There was a Harvard business study that found that job success, 15% of it can be predicted by the degree and knowledge that someone has. The other 85% that predicts on the job success are the soft skills. And I think you just ran through a whole list of them then. I want to hit on some of them because I think they're so important. One of the main ones is bouncing back from rejection. You obviously have to spend a lot of time mentoring students who are struggling, who have been hit with a bunch of rejection. How do you approach a conversation like that? How does that student get back on their feet and start thinking about developing skills and applying their jobs again?
Yeah, again, it's very individualistic approach, but when we're speaking with students who face rejection after rejection, it's about breaking it down. Generally there's kind of 2 points, right? Is are you getting interviews? Okay, that's great. So we know that your applications are okay, right? You're getting through that first stage. If you're not getting to the interview stage, then that means that likely you need your CV reviewing, you need your assessments reviewing. So you break it down very logically. If you can give them the stats, if you can look at their applications and say, okay, this is where we went wrong here, if we try to maybe give more punchy language, and just give them short, sharp tips that can help them. I think if you try and overwhelm them with too much information, it's never going to go well. We want short, sharp things that they can do to make a measurable impact. And I think, if you can suddenly get them an interview, even if they don't get the job, if they've been facing so many rejections over the past 3 months to a year, all of a sudden you get them an interview, even if that interview doesn't go amazingly, that's going to pump their confidence through the roof. There's some companies that we work with that, we know they're happy to just have even an informal chat with students. So for students whose confidence is so far down, sometimes those just informal chats with employers, even if it might not lead to a job, are invaluable because it breaks that kind of professional student barrier, and allows them to kind of form that bond.
So do you think more young people, like, someone who's facing a lot of rejections, something actionable they can take away from that is, like, why don't you try just reaching out to employers on a friendly basis, building out your network, talking to them about what you're interested in, getting a bit of coaching from them, see if you can swipe 30 minutes almost is something people could take from that, right?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent on LinkedIn. It's a very, very powerful tool in terms of networking, but also, in-person networking. I think a lot of graduates don't think that that's something that they should be doing, or it might be cringeworthy to go and speak to higher ups or CEOs or whoever. But people are so willing to give you their time, so willing, especially if you're a student or graduate. Now, they will receive a hell of a lot of requests, so you've got to do something to stand out. But if you can show a real interest in what they're doing, maybe they've done something really cool in a sector that you want to do, or they've got a really storied career in a very niche industry, just reach out to them and see what happens. You probably won't hear from 99 out of 100, but that one person you speak to may become a mentor, may become a future hiring manager, may become a sponsor, someone who's going to really advocate for you. I do say that no one's going to advocate for you harder than yourself, but an external advocate slash sponsor can also be a great thing as well.
Something that I notice a lot in early careers is critical thinking seems to be decreasing in young people that I chat to, and the way that they're using different tools has changed a lot of the way they operate. And so I find that a common weakness, which is something that's asked a lot about in interviews and in assessment centers, is for young people to explain the way that they're thinking and why they made certain decisions. I'm sure you talk to a lot of students who need to get better at explaining their thinking or critical thinking. What are some typical challenges they're facing there? And then how would you advise people to get better at that?
I don't think graduates, I think graduates can still think critically very, very well. It's just about how they develop that skill, right? So they have the intelligence, as I said, that's not the issue. I think it all stems back to this confidence issue. That just my opinion, I will say. But I think it all stems back to this confidence, right? So, I can think of several times in a previous role when I had some, 18-year-old employees. So they weren't graduates, but they were younger and they hadn't experienced a proper professional workplace before, so they felt like they had to ask me for everything. And as a manager, that's exhausting. You don't want that, and especially if it's a graduate, because you expect them to come in with a little bit of something about them, right? It's fine every now and then. Too much is too much for any manager. It's more about that confidence. So with the 18-year-olds, it was like, look, you don't have to ask me for anything. As your manager, I'm your support net, right? So feel free to go out there, make mistakes, think differently, try different things. And if you want to come back to me afterwards just to make sure that's okay, that's fine. But just go and try stuff. I'm not going to shout at you if you get stuff wrong. I'm not about that. I'm that safety net to be there to cover your back if you do mess up and tell you where, you could go right next time. So I don't think graduates have an issue with thinking critically. I think it's just about how do they display that and do they feel confident enough to do it? And especially with graduates who haven't experienced those professional workplaces, they're very alien. As I said, there's unwritten rules across the spectrum in all sorts of sectors. So it's less that they don't know how to do it, it's more about how do they actually apply it to a professional workplace.
Great. I think that's awesome. And I think it's such a critical skill that, like you said, definitely stems down to confidence. Like if students can get more confident, they're going to feel more willing to express their critical thinking in different ways. And now back to the skill gap sort of thing. Obviously, universities, it's sort of their role in some sense to help students acquire knowledge. It's more recently become a tale of like, you should probably be helping them develop skills that help them thrive in the workplace as well. And then there's also the employer side who don't massively help with developing student skills for the most part, but then they're complaining about students lacking skills in many ways. Whose job is it to fix this? Is it the individual student that needs to go out there and hustle and use their resources? Should universities be doing more? Should employers be doing more? What's your perspective on that?
I think everyone can do a little bit more. I think some accountability has to be put on the student. I always say a degree opens the door, but it's the person who has to kick down that door. So, we can have amazing graduates. You can have a first in your degree. You can perform 90% in all your modules. You still might not land a job if you're not willing to put yourself out there and really build the skills that you need to progress within a workplace. Employers, I think I saw a statistic last year, like the average spend that businesses are putting into their employees has gone down and down and down over the decades. Now, part of that will be due to the confusing rules of kind of the apprenticeship levy and all that sort of stuff, but there's just less training out there. So I do think employers need to relook at what they're doing to bring in early talent and how they're building their skills. There's some very, very good programs out there, different graduate schemes that really take graduates through kind of the different areas of the business and really helps them build the skills. But there's so many out there that just kind of expect a graduate to come in and be amazing and they don't need that much support. but all graduates need the right environment to flourish. Very few graduates can walk into a business and suddenly become the CEO. I would say, close to zero of them can do that. So it does take a lot from employers. Now, on the university side, universities have, they've always been good at teaching the academic stuff, but I think as outcomes are now showing, it's more about those universities, what are they doing to instill those soft skills? So at UEL, we do the professional mental wealth and professional fitness modules throughout their kind of time with us. So hopefully by the time they reach my team, they will be, well established, what they're doing most of the time, and they'll have a good kind of foundation. And there's more universities that are doing that. So Kingston's a good example. They kind of have, I think it's their 7 core behaviors that they aim to teach their students in different variations and different programs. And most universities these days have some kind of employability award with soft skills embedded in it. University of Huddersfield is a good example of that. They've been running their global award for a couple of years now, and that very heavily focuses on the soft skill side of things. So, I think everyone has their own part to play. Student accountability, the universities are going to have to adapt because it's not just about those technical skills anymore. But then the employers also need to put their hand in the pot a bit and say, look, we need to invest in these people if we want them to stay and thrive.
Are students making enough use of these sort of services from what you're seeing?
That's a bit of a double-edged sword, I guess, because at UEL there's about 100 staff members within the careers service, right? But very few of those are delivering, career guidance or workshops. These will be employer engagement people, these will be marketing people. How do we speak to the students? Maybe half of them kind of deliver sessions. If you think we might have 50 people who deliver sessions or appointments to a student population of 25,000, the maths just doesn't work. Even if we were to do just kind of one appointment with each student per year, the maths doesn't add up. So I think graduates do make use of it, but sometimes the resource just isn't there for what they want. So universities are having to be creative. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the higher education sector with funding and student numbers being down. They're having to be ever more creative to ensure that we are delivering what we intend to deliver. We're having to be more creative with employers, with our resource and how we bring them onto campus. Because as I said before, engagement is down. You don't want to bring an employer onto campus and 2 students show up. I've had that happen before, and it's quite awkward. So you definitely don't want that. So it's just how universities making best of that resource, and it's also how do we engage with them. There's so much noise out there. They might be working part-time jobs, so sometimes you can't put all of that engagement down to the students. Sometimes you've got to think, did we advertise that in the right way? Did we try and sell that in the right way? Was this the right thing for our students? So they are making use, but it's also, if everyone wanted to make use, universities would not have the capacity to fill that.
Yeah, I can imagine it's pretty crazy. I think I remember when I was at university, the one time I tried to meet with someone in early careers, it just like they were like, I'm fully booked for almost 2 months or something. What other resources should young people turn to then? Like, do they just chat to friends? What, like say you're fully booked, I'm sure you point people in other directions of what they should be focusing on. What do you suggest?
Yeah, so I mean, there's tons of online resources out there. Some of them are a bit dubious, but there is a lot of information out there. But generally, each university will have their own kind of curated resource section. You can look to mentors. So we offer mentoring for all at UEL. So every student who wants one should be able to find a mentor within their preferred sector. And I know other universities do very similar programs. Peer mentoring is another thing that we're trialing, which is really good. So level 6 is mentoring the level 4 students and other such things like that. Like we said before, reaching out to potential hiring managers or mentors on LinkedIn. Anything you can do to kind of build that network out, any way you can receive good quality information. A lot of time these days, lecturers will be far more clued up on careers stuff. Most universities now have either a faculty careers team or kind of an academic engagement body within the university for careers. So lecturers are much more kind of clued up on what options are out there for students. So they can speak to their lecturers well, obviously very time poor as well, but it's just an extra kind of leg that, they may want to explore.
Let's imagine I'm like a student in first year at uni. I'm not sure what I want to do yet, and I've got a lot of time on my hands, but I want to set myself up for like optimal success come the end of my third year. I want to be able to land a job. What should
Mhm.
I be thinking about doing in my first year at uni? Is it going and developing skills? Is it talking to people, learning different things, exploring different careers? A mixture of things. Like, what do you see as like the dream student journey almost to learning those skills, figuring out what industry they want to go into, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think first year is a very interesting point in a student's journey, right? Because some students will be flying, they don't want any support, they're enjoying themselves. Others will be racked with homesickness, they want to drop out, they have no idea what they want to do. So those two journeys are going to look very, very different. Now, if I was given advice to any first years, I would say just enjoy your first year, to be honest. Find your feet, get used to university. It's a massive change. That very much changes in my mind when it comes to second year. I mean, first year, if you know what you want to do, maybe find some volunteering, maybe look at potential internships in the summer if you're able to do that, or just get any kind of work experience. Because so many students come to me and say, "Oh, do you really want me to include my bar work on my CV?" I'm like, yes, I do want you to include your bar work on your CV. You've probably handled aggressive drunk people on nights out in a very professional way. You've probably stayed far beyond your shift hours to clean the bar down at the end of the night. So it's about how can you display these skills. So even if it's just bar work, if you can just get a job in the local student bar, that's going to be amazing for your CV in your future, no matter how you think it might look. Really start pushing yourself on LinkedIn. You might think you got nothing to speak about, but maybe you did a group project, say how much you enjoyed it. Maybe you go on a field trip, post about where you went and what you learnt from it. Maybe you attended a guest speaking session with the careers service. Tag the person, say you really enjoyed hearing about X, Y, Z. There's so much you can post on LinkedIn. You post anything. It's just all about affirming yourself as, yes, this is the sector I want to go into. This is what I want to do. And if you don't know what you want to do, that first year can just be about exploring. Some people don't know what they want to do even after uni, and that's fine. But I think the sooner you understand what you do and you don't like, I think sometimes it's easier to understand what you don't want to do. The easier it can then become to target in your kind of second and third year. So it's all about just finding your feet in first year. Second year is where you really want to start putting your foot to the floor and start working your way towards whatever goal that may be.
I think LinkedIn is like great advice as well, though. But it's scary, right? Like I'm sure you talk to
Hmm.
students and you give them that advice. Get on LinkedIn, post some things. A lot of them don't even have LinkedIn accounts. Um, how does someone get over that? Like they're like, oh my gosh, James, it's scary. My friends are gonna see it. I don't want to post on there.
Yeah, so I understand LinkedIn is a scary endeavor. You don't want to put yourself out there. You don't want to embarrass yourself. All your friends might see it. Your mum and dad might be on there. It is what it is. I don't try to push it too heavily if someone's very much against it. Some people just don't want to do social media, and I can completely understand that. But it's about selling the benefits. The benefits are so vast with LinkedIn. It's much more than just, oh, I can speak to this person, I can speak to that person. Now, more people, and especially students these days, will probably be posting on TikTok. It's no different from posting on TikTok. It's just a different algorithm, a different service. So if you can post on TikTok, you can 100% post on LinkedIn. If you're not posting on TikTok, LinkedIn doesn't have to be as cringy as TikTok, right? I mean, I'm very cringe on LinkedIn because it works for me, right? I'm kind of that professional corporate person. Am I like that in real life? No, I'm really not. But so when my friends see it, they're like, "Who is this person posting on LinkedIn? This is not you, James." And I'm like, "Yeah, but LinkedIn the game on LinkedIn the game is the game, right? And you've got to come across in more of a kind of professional way. Sometimes I'll be a little bit cheeky on LinkedIn. I like to have a bit of fun with it every now and then. But the amount of opportunities that have come to me through LinkedIn and my persona on LinkedIn, everyone kind of I meet at networking events, I'll have a lot of times I say, "Have we met before?" I'm like, no, I think we are connected on LinkedIn though. So the amount of times that comes through, you would be surprised. So yeah, it's interesting the kind of connections you can make through LinkedIn and the opportunities that come your way. So if anyone is scared, they shouldn't be, but I do understand where that kind of fear comes from.
And you never know who's watching. Like, there's
Exactly.
always cool
That's
people
it.
watching.
The CEOs are all on LinkedIn. The amount of people who, it is honestly astonishing the amount of time people are willing to give up if you just drop them a quick message saying, "Hey, would love 10 minutes of your time."
Brilliant. We spoke about confidence and also critical thinking being some key skills that students are not necessarily missing, but could do with working on. What else do you think are some big challenges that students are facing in terms of skill development from leaving uni and going to their first job? What are they missing?
Mm. I think part of it is they don't know what they don't know a lot of the time, especially in this new AI landscape. There's constant news stories, as we said previously, about um, you need to understand ChatGPT. Now you need to understand Claude. Now you need to understand Copilot. Now you need to understand Sora. All these different tools are coming into effect. And to be honest, universities don't have a full handle on them yet. Some of them are doing more than others. But I think students are being told, you're going to need to learn this, otherwise you're going to be left behind. Now, this was probably the same for Excel when it first came out. It was probably the same for many of the other kind of tech and tool platforms that came out. So it's no different to that. But I think the pace at which AI is expanding and those type of skills is quite daunting for students. In terms of the other skills that they're kind of missing, I think students really need to. I think some jobs are easier than others to pin down what skills you need. So, if you go on LinkedIn or you go on some of the other job sites, it will say, these are the required skills that we want. These are your essentials. These are your desirables. Now, a lot of those will be very fluffy things, right? You'll have like, oh, you need organization, you need communication, you need teamwork, you need um, all the kind of just random soft skills that you or I could say, yeah, I can communicate. Yeah, I'm organized. Yeah, I can do teamwork. So I think it's about understanding what those skills actually are and what employers are actually asking for when they actually do ask for communication. Because, if someone tells me I'm good at communication, I expect me to be able to pick up the phone to you and me to have, a 20-minute conversation about the role. Now that's happened sometimes before, and the person will not pick up the phone. They don't want to speak on the phone, and when they do, they're very reluctant to tell me anything. So that tells me you probably don't have good communication skills. So I think it's actually about understanding what these skills are a lot of the time, because some of them are just vague, fluffy language that has just been around forever. So it's more about understanding what skills actually mean and what skills are, and then how they develop them from there.
The vague, fluffy stuff is everywhere. Like when I read people's CVs, because I barely know anything about CVs to be honest, but I still get people reaching out to me saying, "Can you look at my CV?" And I'm like, probably not the best person to ask. I'll tell you something. I don't know how much that skills section that just says random things at the bottom is
I
helping
like to
me.
call that section buzzword bingo.
There you go. Right, there's a name for it. Cool. And so, I mean, this vague, fluffy stuff, obviously students need to move away from this, but how do they show employers then that they can communicate? What do they need to do differently?
Yeah, I mean, we can go back to that networking point, right? I think networking is kind of the big unlock that a lot of graduates don't do. I mean, if you think about, the top universities, so let's just take Oxford and Cambridge, for example, their alumni networks are so vast in so many senior positions across the country that, if you're a Cambridge or an Oxford student, you can tap into those networks like crazy. And, they will have constant events to get alumni back on campus and get you re-engaging with them and speaking to employers. Now, if you're not at Cambridge or Oxford or one of the other top flight universities that seem to get into every company, then you are going to have to work a little bit harder. But 90%, 95% of graduates aren't going out to networking events. I can't remember the last time I spoke to a recent graduate at a networking event, and I go to a lot of networking events. So, if I was to actually meet a recent grad at a networking event, asking about me, what do I do? Like, oh, what's your sector? How could I get into that? I'd find that really interesting because, it's a little bit like LinkedIn, but scarier, because you're going out and meeting people face to face. You're going to have that potential face to face rejection. So that's a big unlock, I think. Some people aren't going to want to talk to you because there's no business relationship there at a networking event, but I still get that. Again, you just got to brush it off. But if we kind of move away from just networking, online applications are more filtering systems than anything else. They're not that kind of creation system. So I think sometimes, and I'm not going to say this explicitly because I still very much believe in a good CV, but sometimes students can overinvest in CV perfection, and they really need to work on their visibility. So, like I've said, getting on LinkedIn, getting out there and networking. There's so many events that I see that I think there was one with CBRE, and I think there was another one with Amex just before Christmas. It was kind of, come into our office, see what we've got to offer. I think they were offering to go over your CV and kind of speak to team members. If I saw that as a graduate, I would have leaped on those opportunities, right? You are getting one-to-one time with potential hiring managers for incredible, well-paid, safe roles. So those sort of things are what you really need to be looking out for. Now, they are highly competitive, and they're few and far between a lot of the time. But look out for these opportunities because they are out there, and they're not always that well advertised. So some of them do fall by the wayside. When you go into these events, it's not about, oh, I'm going to get a job next week. It's thinking about the future and building that pipeline. So if you think about it a bit like a sales pipeline, right? I might not get anything out of it today, but what am I going to get out of it in the future? So when I go to a networking event, I am quite happy if I come away and I don't get any opportunities for students or anything like that, because I'm thinking, okay, I met this person, this person, this person. I can introduce them to this person, this person, this person, and then those people will probably in return, good karma usually comes around, they'll probably introduce me to some people who I can get some stuff out of. So, for me, it's all about the networking, showing your visibility, getting yourself out there, because if employers don't know you there, how are they going to hire you?
Networking's big. I mean, quick story. I remember my first ever networking event in the end of my second year at university, and I couldn't get out of the toilets. I'd like come out for 2 seconds, try and talk to someone, hate every second of it, retreat to the bathroom, think about what I'm going to say next and what I'm going to do. And I think that's a thing that stops a lot of other students from going to them. And I mean, so like, I guess the question is, how do I get out of the toilet and what do I say?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, because I think anyone who has done any large scale networking and goes to a lot of networking events, everyone's been there, right? I'm not 100% confident 100% of the time. I used to be a lot worse with it, but now because I've been to so many, it's kind of second nature. What do I say? What do I do? Who do I approach? How do I approach? And it's, what do you actually say, especially at some events, when if it's kind of like a regular event, like some Chamber of Commerce ones can be, you tend to see the same people, but that in turn then creates these little groups. So sometimes you'll go to a networking event and there won't be a single person on their own. You kind of have to, if you want to speak to people, you're going to have to interject in a group, and that is even for me, that's tough, right? That's hard for anyone. You don't want to be the awkward person who's like, oh, can I join? But that's just what you've got to do. Like, everyone's at a networking event to speak to people. And if they don't want to speak, move on to the next person, because there's countless people at these events who will be happy to talk to you. And unfortunately, there's no easy way to just start networking. You've just got to put yourself out there. Have a glass of wine if you need to get in the mood to speak to people. Have a beer, like anything you can do to just calm your nerves. After the first few, it's second nature. You don't really need anything, but you just need something to help you. Some people will say, oh, I'll go with my friend, or I'll go with a colleague. No, you don't want to be doing that, because more often than not, you'll spend the entire night just speaking to that person, and you don't put yourself out your comfort zone. So if you really need someone just to get your foot in the door and get you to that networking event, then fine, but don't spend the entire night speaking to that person, because that defeats the entire point.
Great, great. I'll try it at my next one. It might get me out of the toilet, I hope.
Yeah.
Cool. And so obviously AI is changing a lot of things for students and the way they apply to jobs. What have been some of the key impacts that you've seen with the way that students are utilizing it to apply to jobs?
They're not using it smartly enough, most of them. So, for example, if you I think the way that most of them use it, they'll take the job description, they'll upload it to ChatGPT. They may upload a previous cover letter that they've written, but most of them won't. And they'll just say, please, can you write me a cover letter that meets the skills and experience on this job description? You're just going to look the exact same as every other cover letter that gets presented, because AI is going to do very, very similar things with that job description for that company. Now, I'm not against using AI to help you write your cover letter or your CV. CV, I think, fair enough, use it as long as it makes sense and it hasn't hallucinated and made things up on your CV. Fair enough, use it. I mean, I can still tell because I've seen that many CVs, but I don't generally care as long as the candidate's good. Um, with cover letters, however, I don't like AI being used too much because for me, a cover letter is trying to tell me who you are and what your values are and what you think about the role and why you want the role. And AI can't tell me that. Now, I'm happy for you to use AI for a template, but I want to understand a little bit more about you. CV is very cut and dry, black and white. It's just telling me what you've done. Cover letter for me is more about telling me why you want the role, what are your values, why is this really connected with you. If you're a career changer, why are you wanting to switch into this job? Because I'm not going to be able to see from your CV why I should hire you for this role. Um, so the way they're using it is completely wrong because they're just getting a cookie cutter generic cover letter when they need something that's going to stick in an employer's mind. There's something on my CV that almost always gets brought up in interviews, and that was that back in university I was a national champion cheerleader. Now, it's a little bit quirky, it's a little bit out there. You don't often see male cheerleaders, especially not in the UK. So that gets brought up 9 times out of 10 in interviews that I've ever had because it's something different. They can remember me like, oh yeah, you're the cheerleader, right? I'm like, yeah, 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 and then we have a brief conversation about that. So CVs, yes, you can use it for your AI, but cover letter, you need to have something in there to stand out, and AI just is not going to do that for you.
Having that like one memorable thing is like a bit of advice that I've often tried to share. I had a friend that I was training for a big run with, and he said that he'd applied to all of these jobs, and the only thing they'd ask about is this big run that he was training for. And it would
Hmm.
be 15 minutes sometimes of like an interview conversation because people are just so interested.
It's something that
And
people can connect to, right? It's one of those.
exactly, I guess it's that. Okay, so the some mistakes people are making with AI is they're just using it like everyone else. How should they use it better?
So if you really want to use AI, the thing is, AI is what you put into it. It can have original thoughts, I suppose, if you want to call them original. But it is what you put into it, is what you will get out of it. So, you know, when I was looking for new roles, I would really speak to AI like, this is the role I'm looking for. These are my skills. Here's some of my experiences previously. I led this project. I increased X by X amount. I was really speaking to AI about me, who I am as a person, and what I'm looking for. And then it was easier for the AI to then implement not just the generic job description of, yeah, we need this, that, and the other. It was able to then link my skills and experiences back to it. Because without that, it has nothing to base itself on. It will just be the basic cookie cutter stuff that will say for everyone else. So you've really got to invest some time and some effort into it. You can't just give it the basics because it will produce a basic result.
Awesome. I love it. Two more things. This has been great. I've loved how just quick back and forth they've been. The next thing I'm curious about is what are employers looking for now? What do they
Mhm.
care about above and beyond just like the soft skills and the basic stuff? What do they want to see in talent emerging?
I think we can take it back to one of the first things I said, right? So it's employers are hiring for behavior. You see a lot of these psychometric tests, the behavioral analysis tests, and especially in kind of assessment centers and that sort of thing. It's the behaviors that they're looking for. They don't really care about your knowledge. They're hiring for potential. They're not hiring based on what you did back in your degree, because they can pay you for your degree, great, but they're not going to get anything out of it. They're paying for the potential amount of money that you could bring them, essentially. So they're looking for you to show off the skills that you have that makes them think, okay, this person is intelligent. They can pick up stuff really quickly. They can adapt to new things. They're going to work well with the team. That's possibly the biggest one. I always say to students, just come across as likable, and you'll probably double your chances because especially if you're interviewing with a direct hiring manager, you've got to think they're interviewing you and they're going to have to work with you 5 days a week. They might spend more time with you than they do their own family. They don't want to work with someone that they're not going to get on with, and if they think you're going to be a bit of a pain in the ass to manage, it's not going to go well for you. So if you just come across as likable, that increases your chances a hell of a lot more. Um, And then, with the behaviors, it's just about showing, yes, I might not have the direct knowledge of this sector, or I may not have direct experience doing this, but it's just about showing I have the potential to learn. I have the potential to, pick this up very quickly and really run with it. And that's how you really differentiate yourself, because so many people say, oh yeah, I've done this before, or oh, I learnt that then. Cool. To me, I don't know that if that means you can do it again. Just because you've done it once doesn't mean you can do it again a lot of the time. And a lot of people lie on their CVs. They might have done this thing and it might not have been very successful. So you've got to prove to me, in my mind, that I think you can do it. And a lot of that is confidence. It's all stemming back to this confidence thing, right? So interviews, you've just got to walk in there with your head held high, make your eye contact, shake the person's hand, and just make the best first impression possible. There's no secret to it. You've just got to be confident for the 30, 45 hour that it is.
No, I think it's great. I love that we keep coming back to confidence because it is a slightly nuanced take. Like a lot of the people I chat to, they talk about going and developing their critical thinking or their ability to use AI. But I do think that all of that is not effective if you don't have the confidence rooted beneath it. So I think it's a great approach. And I think the answer might be obvious, but I want to round things off nicely with something that people can just take away as a last minute thing. If you were 18, 19, 20, 21 years old again, what skill would you focus and prioritize on developing?
I think it would be my confidence, to be honest. I left school with zero confidence at all, very anxious, wasn't completely sure what I wanted to do, but then I went to college, right? Kind of reinvented myself there a little bit, but still inside I just didn't have that confidence realistically. So it would really be pushing my comfort zone, not being afraid to take those risks. I think once I gained that confidence throughout university, and I think, there's a lot of conversations these days about, is university really worth it? What university did for me was it gave me that confidence and that drive and that independence. So I think I would push myself more. I'd push myself far out of that comfort zone, because you've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's one of my favorite sayings. Nothing in life comes easy, despite what people say. Oh, you get your degree and then you sorted. No, it's not like that anymore. You really need to push yourself. You need to work your ass off. I was doing 3-4 jobs in university just to make sure that I had the skills that I needed and I was going to be able to go to where I want, and that I had food in my mouth. So, it's important just to put yourself out there for those opportunities. I've been able to advance in my career after university because of my confidence of putting myself out there for senior positions that, to be honest, I probably had no business doing. But because I had that confidence in, yes, I can do this, I can do that, here's my strategy, and proved myself, that's the reason I was able to advance my career. So I think people just need to have a bit more self-belief and really trust themselves that, what, if I can do a degree, I can do this admin job or whatever, right? Jobs generally aren't too difficult. I mean, probably doctors, but most jobs aren't too difficult. It's just about believing in yourself that you can do them.
Love it. James, it's been awesome. You have a lot of wisdom about early careers and graduate success, and I'm very appreciative of you sharing it. And I think there's a lot of sound bites and things that students can take away from this conversation. So thanks a lot for being here.
No worries. Any support I can give, I'm always happy to.
Cool. Thanks a lot, James. Bye-bye.
Thanks, George.